Welcome, everybody. This is fantastic. There was 150 people registered for this event. That is amazing. So thank you so much, especially since it is Mother's Day. This morning, I was cleaning out my desk and I found a folder that said Spring Rights. And I thought, oh, this is last year's stuff. Let me look at it. And there was a big note that said, don't schedule anything on Mother's Day, which I just saw. So I am Robin Schwartz. Oh, let me highlight myself. I'm Robin Schwartz. I am the Program and Grant Director of the Community Arts Partnership of Tompkins County. We are in Ithaca, New York, and we serve Tompkins County. The Spring Rights Literary Festival is one of our annual programs.
Isn't she Robin Schwartz?
I'm going to ask everyone to stay on mute.
What was your name?
Actually, I'm going to mute everybody.
Robin.
There we go. I am Robin Schwartz. The Spring Rights Literary Festival is one of our annual events, which includes the Greater Ithaca Art Trail, where you can go visit artist studios. There's an Ithaca Artist Market on August 9th at our incredible farmers market. We have a gallery. We have an annual vintage art sale. We also have 5 grant programs for Tompkins County artists and not-for-profits. This year alone, we distributed $575,000 to artists and arts organizations and community organizations. And that's been $6.5 million since I started this job in 1993. So that is how awesome we are. There are 8, now there are 7 additional Zoom workshops, events at springrights.org. That's springrites.org through May 18th. And then there are 8 more writing workshops through August. It's all free, so please take a look at springrights.org. That's WRITES.org. So I want to thank our amazing sponsors. Because of our sponsors, we were able to have a total of 40 events for the Spring Rights Literary Festival for free to the general public and pay 110 artists. So thank you to our sponsors, who are Ithaca College, Wegmans, M&T Bank, CFCU Community Credit Union, the Odyssey Bookstore, and the Ithaca Marriott. We receive grant support from Poets and Writers and the Tompkins County Tourism Program, and our media sponsors are The Root, WITH Radio, WSKG, and Cinemapolis. Please stay on mute throughout the event. Then at the end, maybe we'll have a little bit of question and answer, perhaps. Your bathrooms are down the hall. Please feel free to leave. And we are recording this session. So again, thank you. And we are going to start with Heather Bartlett. Heather is a poet, writer, and professor. She is the author of the poetry collection, Another Word for Hunger, from Sundress Publications. She's a professor of English and writing at SUNY Cortland and is the founding editor of the online literary magazine, Hoxie Gorge Review. I will mention that on the Spring Rights website, there is a list of participating writers if you want to find their websites, but I'll put Heather's website in the chat. It is heatherbartlett.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Happy Mother's Day. I'm going to read a few poems from my collection, Another Word for Hunger. And since it is Mother's Day, I'm going to read some of the mother-centered-ish poems from the book. I'm going to start with a poem called Preparations. And here is the birthmark above my left ear that mother calls beauty as she brushes my damp hair, holding up the loose strands so they can't drip. And she tells me someday I will learn what it means to want more. Woman, she says, still brushing. Sorry, when she hits a knot and I pull my head forward. Stay still. This next poem is called Malapropism, which many of you may know is a term for when you mix up words, when you say a word that sounds sort of like the word that you mean. And so this is a poem that plays around with mixing up words. I never learned to read skeletons the way my mother did. Follow the line of 3 stars with your eyes, she said. Keep moving up and up until you find it, the shoulder bone. And from here you can point the arrow. See? I was 5, maybe 6. She lifted my arm and pointed my hand toward the sky. I wanted to see. I squinted, closed one eye at a time, asked her to show me again, but I couldn't see it. That night, my mother stood on my twin bed and stuck glowing paper stars to the ceiling, careful to recreate the pattern so I would remember. A bright line, 5 stars to make the flexed curve of a bow. Or, if I tattoo this skeleton into my flesh, will it change the way I see the sky? Or, this constellation will never survive my brutal body. So that poem was playing around with the words constellation and skeleton. Second place. What is the line from the folk song I loved as a teen? What is the name for the kind of bee that doesn't sting? It should be so easy, like my grandmother's old phone number. I know this. I can hear the music, see the bee's fuzzy coat, feel the receiver buttons against my cheek, but nothing else. I try to call up the name for this. I call my mother instead. You're just foggy, she says. This isn't the word I'm looking for, but it will do. Remember, she says, the pie contest. And I do. 13 sitting at a metal desk in the middle of a circle of desks. It was my turn. I'd been memorizing for weeks. 3.14159. I spun my hand in small circles with each cluster of digits. 26535. My math teacher seemed to be holding her breath. 89793. There's more. I know there's more. And you won, my mother says. But I didn't win. A boy named Kenny beat me by 5 digits. 32384. You remember, my mother says. And I do. The smell of grass and sweat and all those bees swarming at the window. I probably should have mentioned that pie contest was about, memorizing digits of pi and not eating pie. Okay. This poem, I like to read this poem because I have this very distinct memory of an experience that I would have as a kid in elementary school. And I feel like sometimes people look at me like it's a little bit nuts, like other people didn't have this experience in elementary school of going to cemeteries with big rolls of paper and doing chalk rubbings on old gravestones. I don't know if anybody else ever did this, but it's an important memory for me. And so here's a poem about it. We return to ritual. To the graveyard we hunted as girls, spreading paper rolls across the stones like sheets over corpses, rubbing thick chalk back and forth to raise words from the dead. The ritual was in the reveal. We held our breaths while letters became faces, numbers became bodies. We pressed paper to muddy earth, waiting to feel more than ourselves. We were so close. Um, in the collection, I have a series of poems that center around the idea of Eve, Eve as in Adam and Eve, or Eve as in sort of the idea of emotion, or this sort of thing that we carry with us. So Eve is a recurring character or idea that pops up in the book, and this is one of the central poems, Eve. There you were, a sliver in the pink of my palm. You were the frayed wood dangling from the table. You were the wrinkled lines inside my fist. You followed me up the metal stairs and into the warm kitchen. You lit the burner and boiled the water. You were the steam and my breath on the cold pane turning to ice on the other side of thick glass. You broke through and sat on my chest as I sang shivering and barefoot on the cold floor. You were the sweet, bloody hole when I pulled the sliver out. How to weed the garden. The calendar tells me today is a Tuesday. I continue to cross off the days, but what good is an X when there is no countdown? I used to leave sticky notes on doorknobs. Turn off the coffee pot, but first make more. Make time for to-go cups and disposable lids and one more walk through the garden. What good is a doorknob? How many afternoons have I been wearing this sweater, pulling at its pills and rolling to the next episode? On this show, it's always night and there are sirens everywhere. I haven't lifted the blinds in 6 days, maybe 7. This kind of counting will make you weep. This kind of weeping will dry you up. Look at these hard hands, at the hard ground. Even the soil is tired of waiting. It's not that I can't wait a little longer. It's the dandelions, those dumb flowers poking through the dirt. I think I have time. I'm just going to read 2 more. This poem is called Resistance. It's an anagram poem. So the last word of each line, not that you can see it, but is made up of letters from the title. Resistance. Sure, you want to create a space to resist, to form yourself whole at its center and stay there. But where I come from, you can't escape tradition. Stand near a man, slouch and sit on his knee, but don't crease the fabric. Be nice. This is always present tense. Let's say you ask for something, more ice or a spoon, and the waiter teases, only if you say pretty please. It's only after you say the words and eat with the pretty please spoon that you stare at the table and feel hot recognition rise into your neck. This is what he sees. A girl enters a room alone. She isn't looking at other men. She must need care. No one seems to tire of this. Not even your own sense of self and space can stop it in real time. You can't erase the way your body reads. See, even your mother says, what's so wrong with being nice? And I'm going to end with just a tiny poem because most of the mother poems in this book are from the perspective of a daughter. And I wrote this book before I had my own daughter. But I do have one tiny, literal tiny poem in here that was about wanting a baby before I even knew that I was going to have one. So I'm going to end on this Mother's Day with this tiny poem called Mothers. Isn't this what you really wanted more? A tiny fist, a reason to sew a pocket? Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, everybody use the chat to comment, ask questions. I'll be monitoring it. Next, we have Rabbi Suzanne Brody, who is an author of both multiple books of poetry and a historical fiction novella. Her writing is infused with her passion for her family, education, and Judaism. She serves as the director of Ithaca Beit Midrash, where Jewish learning that touches the heart, mind, and soul is for everyone. Books are available on Amazon and Silverbow Publishing and ithacabeitmidrash.com. I will put that website into the chat. So thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you so much. I really am glad to be here with all of you, and I'm very glad to see so many people interested in what all of us have to share. The work that I'm going to be sharing with you tonight is all from Chrysalis Summer, which will be coming out this summer from Ben Yehuda Press. A lot of it was written last summer. Chrysalis Summer. In the heat of July, I begin to emerge, blinking in the strong light of returning hope. I remain rooted, slowly freeing myself from emotional tangles and testing relationships, ready to begin wandering on the path to becoming myself. Susian emotions. You can breathe anywhere, in the car, outside the door, before the meeting, in front of class, publicly or privately, deep lungfuls of sanity. prior to what I am doing now with Ithaca Beit Midrash, I was working at Temple Bethel with a lot of children, and this is inspired by that. When snack, they walk through the doors, cavernous pits still digesting breakfast, eager not for the games planned, art projects prepped, stories to be shared, but already anticipating, knowing this is a place that nourishes the physical too. Who is wise? Being wise isn't about what you know, but about how wide you're willing to crack open and let yourself be filled with someone else's thoughts as a bridge to the future. Unsent email. My best will never be good enough for you. Even your praise holds criticism, and you are wringing me dry, trying to shove your vision down my throat and control me like a puppet. But I am reaching for my strength, and when my wings unfurl, who knows what I can do? Since we've already heard about Eve, I have Cain and Abel here, ready to join us. Cain and Abel. Maybe God is a picky eater, a vegetarian who leaves the meat pushed aside. Maybe God never learned about no thank you helpings and trying a bite without yucking someone else's yum. Maybe God hadn't yet realized how humans react when they feel rejected. Finding safe space. A cocoon of blankets and pillows provides a retreat where feelings of being crushed or suffocated find me. And even if I could run or fly as fast as my dreams of the greatest superheroes, my baggage never stays lost for long, but a seat by the shore is its own type of magic. Royal blue thread. We set out in search of the color of the sky, a way to hold on to the infinite, clasp a security blanket, reminding us of love and safety. Instead, we found ourselves lost in the depths of the sea, trailing flashes of blue between our fingertips. And I like the idea of ending with something short. So here's a haiku. Moving. What do we pack in the boxes we bring into our future? Thank you all so much. And I look forward to having opportunities to meet more of you in other circumstances too.
Thank you. And check out her website, which I just put in the chat. So next is Karel Hilversum, who is in a car driving. He's not driving, his wife is driving, coming back from an airport. So he's joining us from his phone. He is a native of San Juan, Puerto Rico. He is a geographer and explorer by passion and an educator and psychologist by vocation. He teaches leadership at Cornell University. He identifies as Itharican and explores his new identity. In his free time, he enjoys the outdoors, plays the guitar, and spends time with his family and friends. And I'm going to put his Amazon link into the chat, which is to his book, Entre la Vida y el Mundo. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for being here. Very appreciative. Maybe you all can hear my wife laughing at the Easter weekend in the background. I think I want to start with a haiku just to continue with the haiku themes. It's a short haiku. My poetry is in Spanish, so hopefully this will inspire you to learn a second language so you can expand your appreciation of poetry. But my first poem is Amor de Haiku. Haiku love it is amor de haiku, leve, intenso, leve, casi olvidado. That's my bridge to continue today. And my next poem is called Amor Cortés. It was written in the Sea of Cortés in Baja California Sur in Mexico. And it talks about the beauty of the Sea of Cortés and the life and sea life over there. Amor Cortés. Una silueta sin horizonte. La escarcha luce y guiña a lo lejos. La luna cambia, pero es la misma. Las olas se van, pero regresan. La dama azul sueña un abismo. El viento toma el agua, torna el agua espuma. Este mar, cortés como pescador, cortés como el sol, como este amor. Next poem is called El Hombre de Mi Casa, The Man of My House. It's about realizing that my young son is slowly becoming a man, and I share my house with the man. And it's a beautiful moment for me that day. Si lo vieras, con su rostro perfilado, los pétalos finos de sus ojos, canicas de luna claroscura, su frente limpia, preñada de sueños, y su boca que afirma y canta melodías y paisajes de ilusión. Su pelo de arrecife y sal, sus orejas de caracol buscando el mar. Por la cordillera de sus cejas se marca su carácter, sus asombros y corajes, su cariño y su honor. Su voz declama el futuro como crujir de leña en hoguera. Sus manos rugosas son gentiles y tiznan con caricias mi pálido corazón. Los tablones de mi casa van anunciando su camino, cada día más firmes, sus pasos suenan a hombre, y yo escucho atento a su ritmo, tratando de aprender su son. This next one is called Ave Migratoria, Migratory Bird. It is dedicated to a good friend called Frank Wadsworth. He's a US-born forester that decided to make Puerto Rico his home for almost 60 years and was responsible for reforesting tropical rainforests all across the island, and is one of the pillars of the environmental movement in Puerto Rico. And he passed away in 2022, and this is a homage to Frank. And it starts by a quote that he said in one of his last interviews in the newspaper. They asked him, why did you move to Puerto Rico? And he said, esta isla vale la pena, because this island is worthy of being here. Hoy se fue a volar el Guayacán de Guayacanes, taíno por convicción, hijo de las aves migratorias. Hoy arde un tabonuco en la ladera de un bosque, y el San Pedrito se posa en guardia, honrando tu memoria. Hoy las cascadas y los ríos gritan tu nombre, y los cucubanos iluminan tu sendero a la gloria. Mañana los rojos almácigos seguirán deshojando sus troncos, y el rocío caerá, claro que caerá, como tu voz, gentil y precisa, para recordarnos el camino. And this last one is going to be in English, so hopefully you'll get a sense of my poetry in your language. So it's called Waiting for the Tide, and it was in Quebec province in Tudesac, where Saguenay Fjord meets the St. Lawrence River. The water stretches as far as the eye can see. The tail of the humpback arches where fjord and a river kiss. The water flows on top of each other, above, sweet, like the sap of a maple tree, below, salty, like the taste of a lover's skin. The crashing waves set the tempo. The breeze wakes me up from a dream. And here we are, you and I, laying still on this rocky outcrop, shaped by the winds, accompanying each other through this midlife passage, like boats at low tide, waiting for a rising sea. And that will be all for tonight. And I really appreciate all your attention and thank you for the opportunity to share my poetry with you all.
Thank you so much for joining us from your car. Thank you. Was that the first time your wife had heard Itharican? Am I
No.
pronouncing it correctly?
No, she's actually told me that we should do t-shirts
Why not?
with the Itharican. There's
Do
a
it.
big community of Itharicans in Ithaca.
Go for it. I could put a link. All right. So next is Roselyn Teukolsky. Born and raised in Johannesburg, South Africa, Roselyn has lived most of her adult life in Ithaca. She taught math and computer science for 30 years at Ithaca High School. Since retirement in 2009, she's been a writer of mysteries and thrillers. A Reluctant Spy and The Fourth Woman will be published by The Story Plant in 2024 and 2025. And I will put her website into the chat.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. I will read chapter 1 of A Reluctant Spy. I jumped and I survived. Nothing else matters. Mike and I are decked out in jumpsuits, helmets, and goggles, boarding a tiny Cessna. The day is cloudless, with nothing in the soft blue air but a gentle breeze. The jump is a go. This is the smallest plane we've ever jumped from. We chose it because it was available on this, my 30th birthday, which also happens to be our 10th wedding anniversary. It's been a rocky year, and we're trying to make things right. Part of the tension is Mike wants me to collaborate on his research, but I'm bored with it. It's tricky because I'm dependent on his grant. Right now, he's Mr. Professor, and I am Mrs. Research Assistant. I'm not bitter. I love Mike beyond all reason, more than skydiving and mathematics and even computer science. He's 5'10", gorgeous, all golden ratios, whereas I'm tall and ungainly with everything out of whack, arms too long, knees too knobby, feet like flippers. People probably wonder what he sees in me. Weird, wonderful, and brainy, my Madsy. That's what. After a rattling liftoff, our pilot Todd deftly takes us on a smooth ride. We'll be jumping from 11,000 feet, the highest this puddle jumper can go. Through the window below is the dazzling landscape of the Finger Lakes, upstate New York. Mike is okay as a skydiver. I've trained him since our first meeting, and he's earned his licenses fair and square. Certainly in the first few years, our relationship was symbiotic. I taught him how to fly, and he taught me how to be in this world. Socializing is not one of my superpowers. Over the PA system, Todd announces we'll be on a jump run in 3 minutes. Time to ditch our safety belts. I sit like the Buddha, cross-legged and perfectly parallel to the door, gathering my mental energy. But Mike can't sit still for a second, hunched over and tapping his knuckles on the floor. Blue sky, sweetie, I say, and he grins. The door light signals it's time. There's another couple on this load, and they will jump first. When they flip the door up, a whoosh of air shudders through our plane. The jump light is flashing, and out we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mike has never been a natural jumper, and true to form, he tumbles out inelegantly. But his training kicks in, and he maneuvers into a stable arch. When I jump, there's a familiar rush, then freedom. The four of us get into a round, grasping hands, legs fanning out behind, floating like Matisse dancers high above the earth. When it's time to separate, we turn, rotating 180 degrees, sweep our arms back, and glide far away. Soon we are flying solo, belly down, I own the sky. There's a tingle in my fingertips, an unbearable lightness that's never with me on earth. I glance at my altimeter, 6,000 feet, not yet time to deploy my parachute. The friction of the air buoys me up as I gaze down, far above Cayuga's waters, Ithaca, and the towers of Cornell University, my academic home. There are the Finger Lakes vineyards, purple and green, and the landing area, a large open space of farmland where we'll drift as we descend. It's time. I pull the handle to release my pilot chute, and a great orange wing blows out above me. But my body jerks out of free fall. What the hell? The lines of the parachute are twisted, pulling the fabric from my control. Stay calm. Breathe. I reach up to the bundle of lines and begin to tease them apart while my canopy twirls madly in the wind. An accelerating spin is threatening to sink me if I can't fix the problem. My mind tunes out everything but the job at hand. Then, all at once, the lines untwist and the parachute unfolds. Whew, that was close. I pull both brakes simultaneously, and my billowing canopy and I surge forward in a rush of relief. Cool under fire, that's me. My mother once said, "You're a cold fish, Madeline, just like your father." My daddy, who died when I was 10. Shit! Mike jolts me out of my reverie. He's already under canopy, but he's out of whack. His lines uneven, spinning out of control. Why isn't he getting himself out of it? A pulse beats in my neck. Mike, relax, shoulder down. But in the roar of air, he is deaf and reels wildly on his axis. When it seems I've lost him, his shoulder dips low like it should, and his body slows. Finally, but the crisis isn't averted. His parachute is a tangle of lines, preventing it from opening properly. How is that possible? I packed it myself. Now he's flailing about, grabbing at lines, twisting in the wind. It's futile to yell. He won't hear a thing. And yet still I shout, Mike, use the reserve. We've never had to use the reserve. Come on, Mike, do it. God damn it. He's heading toward me in a slow motion horror show. There's no way to prevent the collision of our parachutes. Paralysis, terror on his face, his mouth a frozen scream lost to the wind. The tentacles of his twisted canopy wrap themselves around my lines, and I am sucked into his disaster, my tangled chute going into a slingshot revolution, the world turning upside down. We are lashed together in a twin death spiral, plummeting at 120 miles per hour. He's frantically yanking his red and silver handles, but his equipment is in catastrophic failure. We're going to crash. In a wild panic, I lunge forward, try to grab onto him. Something, help us, no use. Stop. Think. It's suicide to stay attached. Free yourself. My cold brain clicks in. Just one chance to save us both. Like lightning, I pull my own red cutaway handle and release Mike and the whole damn mess. Then my silver handle, a miracle, it turns, my reserve chute slapping open, too near the ground for good deployment, but maybe I'll get some drag before hitting the ground. And perhaps the orange-yellow mass of twisted canvas on Mike as he falls away will inflate enough to slow him down. Dear God, forgive me. My speed is increasing. Breathe. My reserve chute is only partially inflated, but holding. Any drag is good, and I feel it. A bird flying on damaged wings. Icarus, the sun reflected on the farmland below, barreling down, too fast to survive. It all flashes past in a Fibonacci spiral of lake, sky, Mike, earth, pink curves, trees, forests, gravity dragging me down, down into the abyss. Thank you. That's it.
Oh my God, I was holding my breath. How long until we find out what happens?
Well, the book's coming out in October. That's all I can say.
That was the one called A Reluctant Spy.
Yes.
Oh my
Thank you so
goodness.
much,
And I would
Rob.
love to hear that as an audiobook. That was great. Thank you so much.
Thank
Oh, I
you.
need a break. Next, next is Sue Mann. This is one of my favorite bios, Sue. From former South African diplomat in Palestine to slayer of corporate monsters, Sue's career has been thoroughly nonlinear. Adventurer, post-PTSD thriver, and rocker of a badass phoenix tattoo. All of this is weaved into her debut historical fiction novel, On the Road to Jericho.
Thanks, Robin. Roselyn, how am I supposed to read after that? My heart is still going. And I don't know what Robin was doing that she put 2 South Africans on a Zoom read. I didn't think she even knew that.
I didn't.
All the other connections. So yes, audience, you have 2 South Africans today. And Karel and I will have to get together and talk climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. But that's not the extract I chose from my novel today. I am choosing something early in the novel. The protagonist is Eleanor Williams. Pretoria, South Africa, 1987. I get on the bus, excited. I have Graceland playing on my Walkman. I'm headed into town, alone, to do some shopping. Without Mom. Yay! Finally! When Mom takes me shopping, she is always pushing me to get ladylike clothes. I have nothing vaguely fashionable in my wardrobe. It's all good quality, serviceable, and respectable. I want a little more excitement. Something that says, this is me. I have my own taste. This is my opportunity. And I'm going to make the most of my newfound freedom to shop by myself and listen to the music I want to without commentary from Mom to turn it down or to turn it off. I wander downtown, humming along, happily window gazing, popping in and out of shops. Mom has the ones she goes to. I investigate the ones she would never go into, where the style is bolder, brighter, tighter. I can hear Mum's disapproving voice in one ear and Natasha's laugh of encouragement in the other. I come out of one of the stores, a bag on my arm. So far I've picked up a gorgeous red Indian scarf shot through with gold threads and a pair of stovepipe leggings. Most decidedly, Mum would not approve. Now I'm hungry. So I head to Van der Veld Street to find a sandwich shop. And while I'm standing on the corner of Pretorius and Van der Veld Streets, on an innocuous winter day, Pale blue sky overhead, regular weekday traffic in town. I am suddenly rooted to the spot in terror. Absolute, gut-wrenching terror. I look around me wildly, suddenly realizing there could be a bomb. Literally anywhere. It could be there in that bus shelter, or there in that trash can, or there in that parked car, or there in that person's bag. I suddenly remember all that's happened just in Pretoria over the last few years. David Miller, the father of one of Tig's friends, blinded by the bomb outside the South African Air Force headquarters in Pretoria. How many did it kill? I can't remember, but a lot. Air Force headquarters is just a few blocks away. Then a few months ago, the bomb that exploded outside of the movie theater we all go to, that's a few blocks away in the other direction. Lately, there seem to be near daily news reports of bombs found at soft targets all over the country. Banks, shopping malls, restaurants, fast food outlets. The apartheid government says the bombs are the work of the banned terrorist African National Congress and uses the bombings as an excuse to conduct brutal raids in the townships and mass detention without trial of Black prisoners. Nelson Mandela from prison and Oliver Tambo in exile say the government is using agents provocateurs and that it is apartheid and its increasingly vicious and violent enforcement that are the real culprits. South Africa is in upheaval. Mum and Dad say it's becoming ungovernable. Sanctions are really starting to bite. The pressure on the apartheid government is mounting from within and without. We talk about it as a family over dinner most nights. Mum and Dad explaining what's happening, answering questions, explaining why they support Archbishop Desmond Tutu's call for sanctions. His call last year polarized the Anglican community. Half the congregation of our own church left when Father Tim endorsed Tutu's call. We weren't one of the families to leave. Mum and Dad talk about how they conflicted between supporting the protests and uprising against the apartheid government, but decrying the violence and the targeting of white civilians. We talk about the latest family that we know who is emigrating to Australia or the UK. South Africa is our home, Mum and Dad say. We're not leaving. The townships are already ungovernable. On the news, I see the Caspers rolling in, the police tear gassing, beating, shooting, killing, the state of emergency giving them almost unfettered powers. But in the Pretoria suburbs, at St. Anne's, life goes on as normal. Our lives are untouched, while brutality and oppression rain down elsewhere. It's always out there, not in here. It's on the pages of the newspapers, on the news at night. Real, but not real. Happening to others, not to us. For now, at least. Tig has, as expected, and like all white males when they turn 18, received his call-up papers for compulsory national military service. But as he already has his admittance to university, his conscription is delayed by at least 4 years. So with the exception of David Miller, it's never come close to touching us personally or directly. But Mum had a vicious argument with her brother some weeks back. The apartheid government is using the powers it's given itself under the state of emergency to call up people who did national service to supplement the police. Uncle Charles had been called up and was on the fence. "We are not butchers," Mum had yelled at him furiously. "We do not police apartheid. We do not suppress protest. If you go, I will never talk to you again. And what if something happens to you? What will happen to your family? You have a moral duty to your family, to your country, to refuse this call-up." Mum's perpetual state of being seems to be anxiety. To see her angry like this? My mouth had dropped open. and I'd stared at her in silent awe. This is Mum? Who is this woman? So here I am, standing on the corner of Pretorius and Van der Walt streets in Pretoria, seat of the apartheid government, on an innocuous winter day, riveted in place by terror. There really could be a bomb, I think, anywhere. It could go off at any time. For what seems like an eternity, I stand there, frozen in terror. And then just as suddenly, it passes. Another voice whispers in my head, "Yes, Elle, there could be a bomb anywhere. It could go off at any time. And what are you going to do about that? You have a choice. You can stay home and afraid. You can succumb to the fear that both sides want you to live in. Or you can say, screw it. This is my country. If it's my time to die, it's my time to die. You can live your life on your terms or on theirs. What is it to be?" And just like that, I shrug off the terror, put my headphones back on, and go about my shopping. The answer is not in doubt. I choose living on my terms over living in fear. You're on mute, Robin.
There we go. The button wasn't in the same place once I highlighted my screen. For anybody who often does Zoom things, there's always a moment where something that you've hit 40, 100 times, that's a number, suddenly is not there anymore. So thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, let's put them in the chat because there's over 75 people in the room. So if anyone wants to, oh, and Heather is not here because her baby needed her attention, or as she said, my baby is having a meltdown. So, but she hoped she would be back. So if anyone has a question for Heather, feel free to put it in the chat. Oh, and Sue, thank you, Sue. I forgot. Sue put a link just now into the chat for you. And authors, please ask questions of each other. Roselyn, how
Yeah.
did your math and computer background influence your work?
Well, it influenced it hugely because in this book, it's a book about a computer scientist who becomes a spy. So there's a lot of computer science for lay people in the book, and it uses computers to solve the mystery. So a lot.
How come no one's asking whether the husband character lived?
Because you know why? Because they know I wouldn't tell them.
You won't tell them. Yep.
No, may I say something though?
Of course.
I'm very excited because I have a special guest here today, Todd Supple, who is my skydiving consultant.
Ooh.
I have never skydived, not a day in my life. And he helped me with the details of the skydiving. So I want to thank him publicly.
Thank you for helping. That was very vivid.
Well, Roselyn, I would have sworn you'd skydived based on how you wrote.
That's how good
Yeah,
Todd
yeah, I would have
was.
sworn it.
My question was how many jumps? Correct.
And my husband has said he wanted to know how many jumps you'd done.
Roselyn,
thank
you did have that very question from a student Rachel Zachs, who
My student.
can't bring herself to call you Roselyn, you're Mrs. Teukolsky. And she did ask that skydiving question.
Oh, she asked if the
She said,
husband is?
had you been skydiving?
Oh, had I been skydiving?
Yes.
No,
Does anyone else?
never.
You put some questions in for these wonderful writers. We don't have any questions, so I'm going to do a little plug for what else is happening, and then we will wish you all a happy Sunday and Mother's Day.
There's
We have-
another question. There is a question.
Oh, goody. I will read, I'm going to continue with my plug, and then I will read a question to Sue. Tuesday, there's a local anthology reading at 6:30. On Wednesday, there's something which should be really interesting. Polychromatic Voices, Translation and Performance. There will be, I believe, the same text written in a number of different, read in a number of different languages. There's a Thursday event called Existing Beyond the Pen, another group reading on May 17th. On May 18th, Stories by Students in Cornell's Milstein program in Technology and Humanity. And on later that same day, a Collective Monstrosities in the Poetry of Amelia Ayarza de Herrera, bilingual 2-voice reading. And then there's all sorts of workshops through August. So here's a question for Sue. Did you consider a straight autobiography before going down the novel route?
Momentarily? Not really, because I wanted to play with multiple points of view. I wanted to be able to step into the experience of other characters in the book, and so straight autobiography would not have given me that.
And someone else had also said, how much of Eleanor's story is autobiographical?
I haven't done the math, Roselyn. Probably 80 or 90%. It's heavily autobiographical, but not exclusively. So, and I see there was a question before that though, which I think was to all of us.
Yes, and the question was for all of you, when do you fit writing into your lives?
For me, I'm a woman of a certain age, which means I'm usually up and awake sometime around 5:30, 6 a.m. Turns out that's a really good time to write.
Wow.
Roselyn.
I have only had time to write since I've retired from teaching. Teaching is a 36/7 job. There is never a minute for writing. I always had these stories in my head, but I taught full-time high school, which meant they had to wait till I retired. So it's a very good question, because I admire the people who do find time with full-time jobs.
As someone who works at the Arts Council, it's wonderful to see how many people start creating in earnest after they're able to let some other thing go, like a job. Roselyn, how do you come up with mystery plots?
Oh, I wanted to answer the same question and say
Oh,
that.
good. I'm sorry. Suzanne.
say that for poetry, a lot that because they are small pieces at a time, I'm able to sort of fit them in as they come to me. But I am doing a lot more fiction writing now, and that's because I am able to arrange my schedule to do that. And that really I couldn't do until I had space and time to do that. But the poetry, a lot of it comes from conferences, because that's a time when I can actually think, or just when I need to get feelings out.
I can answer also that question again also. And very similar to what she just expressed, because it is a shorter genre. Sometimes a comment or something that someone says or something that I see, I found it to be poetic, and I use that as a kind of anchor for writing a poem, and keep that poetic moment in my head for several weeks and slowly craft a poem. And then sometimes it's just like event happened, like good friend passing, and it just flows in an instant. So it's different.
I think what you're hearing from all of us is like, when you want to write, you write. You just find the way to do it. So for the budding authors in here, I would say just, even if it's just 10 minutes.
I was never able to do that. It takes me more than that to get into it. I admire people who can do it.
Before I forget, just because it's in my head, if you are a Tompkins County artist, we do have grants called an SOS grant, a strategic opportunity stipend. Could be for publishing, could be for self-publishing, could be for going to a conference, could be for going to a retreat. So that is all on our website. Kim asked, Roselyn, how do you come up with mystery plots?
Well, first of all, I have a fevered imagination. But it's from reading the newspapers, really. The story I have in this book, I found the spark in the New York Times in a headline. I won't say what it was because I don't want to give anything away. But I get a lot of ideas for my plots from stories in the newspaper. You read about somebody found in a bathtub in a body bag that he appeared to have zipped himself into. That immediately sparks a question, and I come up with how he got there, and then build it into a mystery. So
Tim Martin asked a question. I don't know if it's to anyone in particular or all the writers. How is the experience of your protagonist relevant?
It was to Sue. Sue. It was separated. It was to Sue.
Oh, okay. How is the experience of your protagonist relevant to us today?
Well, I happen to know Tim. So yeah, he's throw me a curveball there, Tim. You want the short answer to that? I think just about every human, and maybe women more so than men, but I haven't walked the life of a man. We have to ask ourselves where we belong. We have to find that out. And ultimately, that is the journey Eleanor goes on, figuring out where she belongs. How's that for a cryptic answer to your question, Tim?
So there's a lot of Sue and Roselyn questions. So Sue, I will ask them all. Sue, how has your Cornell Johnson School experience inform your writing?
That's clearly from a former classmate of mine who knows that I went to the Johnson Graduate School of Management. The short answer is, did it inform my writing? Yes, it's informed my writing hugely because the book is historical fiction, but it has themes of leadership and power and systems. And what does it mean to be a leader? And what does it mean to bring our messy human selves to work? And that is an experience we really started exploring at the Johnson School. I was one of the Park Leadership Fellows there. So it absolutely informs.
Here's a question to everyone. Were each of you, this is by Karen Gifford, were each of you inspired to write at a young age, even if you didn't until later in life? Were you prolific writers?
I started writing poetry in 6th grade, and I actually started with a lot of haiku on the back of my dad's old business cards that he gave me. A lot of those were really bad at that age, but I never stopped.
Who's timer? Any, Sue and Roselyn or Karel, when did you start writing?
I started when I was really, really young. When I was in elementary school, I wrote The Mystery of the Haunted House, which my teacher used to read to the class every day. It was terrible, but it was fun to do. I sent it to a publisher. Somebody typed it for me. And the publisher wrote back and said, if you're still writing in 20 years' time, send it to me again.
That's
never-
very encouraging.
Well, did you?
No, I became a teacher, had no time to write.
Is that publisher still around? You can send them a
Yeah,
copy of your
there's
latest.
some poor person in South Africa.
Right. I don't think it matters whether art is good or bad, as long as you do it. Sing in the
I
shower.
started writing in my teens, but I was more informed and more inspired by the Latin American folk song book of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And the solidarity and love and this dream for the future that's involved with that song. And most of my early poems were written in digital, and that computer got stolen so I don't have anything on my early writings, which is funny. It's kind of poetic itself.
So I have a question for Karel. You are a geographer and explorer by passion and an educator and psychologist by vocation. Does your writing
Yes.
reflect those?
Oh yes. So I see myself constantly going to themes of nature and human emotions, and kind of mixing those back and forth, and I'm just observing nature and using nature as a way to express my experience.
I see you play the guitar. Do
Which
you
is also a theme. Yeah, which is also a theme in Latin American kind of heritage.
I was going to ask you if you did songwriting as well, since you play guitar.
I do. So my poetry is in songs as well.
Excellent. Do we have any more questions? We have a lot of wonderful comments in the chat. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of day. And it was wonderful to see you all. This group had a record number of participants. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for organizing, Sue.
I didn't organize. That was Robin.
No, Robin. I thought Robin and I said Sue. I've been working too hard. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you. We can have an
It
after.
was
Thank you all.
wonderful.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.